Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We welcome back a guest to the show, Robert Duval. He is the New England Regional Manager and Senior Fire Investigator for the National Fire Protection Association. So we'll chat with him when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today, Robert Duval, has been on the show before. He is the New England Regional Manager and the Senior Fire Investigator for the National Fire Protection Association. First of all, welcome back.
Thank you.
This is probably a good time of the year to have you back to talk, and it's shortly after, as we tape the show, after Hurricane Sandy too. So as people get prepared, at cold weather, maybe some tips and things of that sort. And I think we talked a lot about this the last time we were on too. But first, let's get people kind of familiarized, if they don't know, what the National Fire Protection Association is.
The NFPA was founded in 1896. A group of engineers and such, and sprinkler designers and mill owners got together and put together codes for sprinkler installation, and it branched out to electrical installations and so on. So there was a standardization in the industry. It has branched out in 100+ years into a not only a codes and standards organization, but a fire safety, fire protection, public education agency as well. And we have a research arm that conducts research into fire protection and fire safety. So it's multifaceted, but the main focus is to reduce the burden of fire on society through codes, through education, and through research to improve products that are out there.
And your role?
Well, as the New England Regional Director, I serve as the point of contact for the 6 New England states for NFPA. State Fire Marshal's offices, fire service agencies, fire protection firms, and the general public is the point of contact. So it's one stop, and then I can get the information they need through the agency or put them in contact with someone from the NFPA that would help them. As the fire investigator, I look into significant incidents as to did the codes play a role? Were the codes followed? Any large loss of life, whether it's civilian or firefighter? What impacted the incident? And we, on occasion, will look into successful incidents as well. A sprinkler system that saved a building and the occupants therein.
Because you can use that as an example for others.
Exactly, a lessons learned sort of thing. Positive, they're rare, but when it does occur, we like to document that as well. But unfortunately, there are many of the negative incidents out there that we look into and try to get the information and then get it out to the fire protection and the fire service communities.
Does that mean you're on the road a lot? And if so, 6 states, even though the New England states are fairly small, it's still a large area to cover, right?
Yeah. Most of my travel is by car. I have colleagues elsewhere in the United States, and to go to a meeting, they'll have to get on a plane. I just have to get into my vehicle and drive. It involves an overnight stay from time to time, but I never complain about my travel when I compare notes with my colleagues from elsewhere in the country.
I mean, New England, there's other states that are probably bigger than New England as a whole.
Absolutely. With the exception of Maine, you can travel just about anywhere in a couple of hours. But it's worthwhile to reach out to these organizations, either in presentations or just being a point of contact, because they're always looking for information, whether it be in an aftermath of an incident, or if they're going to testify at a hearing, whether it's for legislation or for public information. And we can give them the information code-wise, statistical information on number of fires, number of fatalities, particular types of fires, whether it's heating fires, cooking, smoking, candles, things like that. We gather that sort of data and we make it available to these organizations or governmental agencies. So
since the last time you were on, which was probably a couple of years ago, we've had a couple of hurricanes, and some major storms. Now that in and of itself, you may think, well, what? But if you think about it, fire safety has a lot to do with that, especially with power going out and people using generators and things of that sort. And since we had mentioned that the taping of the show is shortly after, the remnants of Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy has come through, one of the things we were talking about off the air, so we'll just jump around a little bit here, is people's use of generators, and in a lot of cases, the misuse of generators.
Correct. there's two categories. There's folks with generators and there's folks without generators in the aftermath of the storm. The folks with generators, the important thing to remember is to use them safely, use them in a well-ventilated area. With any type of internal combustion engine comes carbon monoxide. And if you can't put the generator far enough away from the house, the carbon monoxide from the exhaust is eventually going to make its way back into the house. So you have to put it in a well-ventilated area. The best place to put it is outside, not in a garage and leave the door cracked open or anything like that. You're not going to get the ventilation that you need. If you have to, for security reasons, and you have to secure it to something, find a tree or a substantial object away from the house.
Yeah, just chain it up, right?
And chain it up and get it away from the building. And that way the fumes from the exhaust are far enough away from the building and your family can be safe and warm and have the refrigerator running and so on inside the home. The folks without the generators are the folks that tend to use candles when the power goes out and then other creative means of heating, and it's not necessarily safe. As with candles, you never leave a room with a candle unattended, never go to bed with candles burning. If at all possible, do not use them for a source of light. Get a flashlight.
This isn't 1853 anymore.
Exactly. And then a lot of folks that, let's say I have a flashlight, they go to use it. The only time they use it is when the power goes out. They turn it on, it's dead.
Right.
So with the storm coming or with the potential for power outages coming in the winter months, get some extra batteries and keep them for the flashlight, or buy a lantern with a pretty good sized battery in it that's going to last.
There are apps that have flashlights on the smartphones.
Everybody's phone has a flashlight built into it, and it saves that open flame aspect of a candle, which it just tends to be either a pet knocks the candle over, you put it next to something, a window curtain or something like that, or you just leave it unattended, it melts and tips over and it sets something nearby on fire. So with both categories comes some danger. You're a little more comfortable with the generator, but you still can't just rest back and assume everything's going to be okay.
But even with the generator, we were talking again off the air about, is it wise to, I know there'll be situations where people will need heat, and I understand that, and some people may be under the assumption that all their food will go bad if they don't let it run all night, overnight. But not necessarily the smartest thing to do, let it run all night.
No, it's probably not best for the generator to run uninterrupted for 24 hours like that, depending on the type of equipment you have. But if you're not going to need it overnight, if you have an extra blanket and don't open your refrigerator during the night, then shut it off and run it again in the morning. With the generator cool in the morning, that's your best opportunity to refuel it, because it is not advised to refuel it while the engine and the muffler especially is hot. Spill some gasoline on there and you could have a fire. So if you shut it off and then refuel it in the morning, you're all set to run all day or run while the house is occupied, certainly. And one other thing with the generator, as far as the safety aspect of it goes, and it goes to the electrical safety aspect of, make sure that the system itself, the generator and the wiring, is designed properly. Don't just run extension cords all over the place running off the generator. Have an electrician take a look at the system, either put a system in with a transfer switch so your generator can run your house and you're not backfeeding anywhere else so the CL&P folks won't be injured working in your neighborhood, or just use the proper size cords to run your refrigerator or run a furnace or some other device inside. Just don't get the first extension cord you find in the closet that you haven't used in years.
Could be frayed or...
Exactly, it could be very old and you plug it in and it's not meant for that power rating, and you could end up either damaging the device you're using or starting a fire.
How long does a typical consumer generator last for if you fill it up? Or do people usually fill it? Or
depends on the size of the fuel tank, and I'm sure the owner's manuals will tell you at a certain load the generator will run for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. And a good generator will have some sort of fuel indicator on it. My particular generator that I have at home runs for about 6 hours on a tank of fuel. Well, under a certain load. It wasn't everything running all at the same time, but the smaller generators, you probably get a couple, or maybe 3 hours out of them. And the larger ones, some of them are propane fed, and they last for as long as your propane fuel will run. If it's a big tank or something along that line, you could get 3 or 4 days or more out of the tank.
Since we've had another storm come and go, and this isn't necessarily your forte, but I'll just get your opinion, considering that you're in the business. After power was out for a while, you understand people get ornery, they get antsy, they complain. And the CLMP, the power guys, they have to wait a certain amount of time for safety. Has to be below 40 miles an hour wind-wise for them to get the trucks up there, and also you have to work with municipalities, the tree cutters and stuff. And some of these guys got some flack for supposedly taking too long, depending on if your particular area of power was out for more of a while. But I'm sure you have sympathy. You're out there investigating and working when these sorts of things happen, so you must have sympathy for them.
Yeah.
Not for the people, but for the workers.
The folks in the yellow trucks, whether it's the power company or the tree trimmers that go hand in hand after a storm like this, are not the folks that are making the decisions on what street gets turned on first or what circuit gets turned on first. So folks turning their anger on these crews as they come down the street probably isn't such a good idea. It's unfortunate that it happens, and logistically some neighborhoods don't get turned on as rapidly as others, but to turn your wrath on these guys that have been up for days on end, working the best they can, is probably not advisable. Write a nasty letter or make a phone call to someone else, but don't take it out on the crews. They're doing the best they can.
And some of these guys are coming in from out west. I
passed some trucks from Nova Scotia earlier this week, so they're coming from the Four Corners.
So we're in the vein of talking safety today. So let's fast forward to Christmas and the holiday season. That's when all the decorations come out. That's when trees get fancy and bushes get decorated and people plug things in all over the house and outside too. Let's talk about that and the hazards that come with it.
Okay. Well, the first thing about holidays, Thanksgiving through to Christmas, is tradition. Everybody wants to take out the decorations that they've been handed down through their family and explain to the young ones, where this came from and so on and so forth. Well, that's nice when you're talking about ornaments, but when you're talking about electrical strings of lights and other little things, older is not necessarily better. The cabling and the insulation on these wires and things like that tend to get old and brittle and so on. And it's probably not such a great idea to plug these lights in for the past 25 or 30 years because they're hand-me-downs from great-grandma. As much as you'd like to hold on to those, it's not advised because of all of these time-worn damage that could be done to the lights. So as much as you'd like to keep them, it's probably advisable to toss them out and purchase some new lights. And a lot of the stores at this time of year have a rebate program. If you turn in an old string of lights, they give you a couple of dollars off of another string and so on. And for the most part, everything is lightweight, everything is very, very small, all the wiring is very small. It's not meant to last for hundreds of years like the older things were. So the first bit of advice would be, when you take these lights out and you get ready to inside or outside, take a look at the wiring. Look at it, pull the wiring apart and take a look at it. Maybe kind of work the insulation back and forth between your fingers. If the insulation comes off in your fingers, it's time to go. It's time to throw them out. And then take a look at the wiring. Maybe work the wiring back and forth. If it's so brittle that you actually feel the wire break inside there, again, you've broken that circuit. It's time to get rid of that light. Kind of a good rule of thumb is if you can't buy bulbs to replace for that circuit, then that is so old that it's probably time to throw it out. And then the overloading that you mentioned. Again, everybody wants their house to be festive, and you want to outdo your neighbor. You want to have all kinds of colorful lights, and if you have little kids, it's great to see their eyes when they look at all of this. But keep in mind that you can only plug in so many devices or so many strings of lights into a particular circuit. Putting these plug strips in unison, stringing them all together, 3 or 4 of them in a row, and then plugging them into one outlet on the wall is not good. Eventually, hopefully something will trip in one of those circuits, and it'll shut the whole system down. But it is not advised to do that. If you get a plug strip to plug in your lights, only plug in enough to meet the manufacturer's recommendations on that particular strip, and then shut it off when you're not using it. Don't leave it on all day, don't leave it on all night. When you go to bed at night, when the kids go to bed at night and it's time, shut the circuit off, unplug it from the wall, whatever's the easiest thing to do. On the outside of the house, make sure you're only using lights that are rated for outdoor use. That's very important.
And the extension cords,
And
too.
the extension cords, and where you're plugging it in. A lot of houses now have outdoor outlets. That's fine. Make sure you're using the outdoor outlet. If you have to run the cord inside the building, then something might not be, copacetic. You might want to look into another means of doing that. But again, same thing. Look at the insulation. The lights that are outside have to put up with the weather. So you're putting hot, cold cycles. The weather, the sun beating on it, and then it's cold. That insulation tends to break down quicker. Take a look at that. Make sure the lights are all functioning. Make sure the cords are in good order, and make sure your extension cords or your outlets on the home are in good working order too.
And sometimes people forget that it may be a great idea to get as many lights and decorations up as possible, but your electric bill really goes up too.
Yeah, so watch the meter the day before you plug in the lights and the day after you plug in the lights, and it's a big difference. And
we'll take a break and come back. Let's give people a website so they can go and learn more.
Okay, www.nfpa.org, and there's a public education link on that page, and it opens up to all kinds of free downloads. You can download fact sheets, you can download coloring books and activity books for the kids, and there's an offshoot of that, which is a Sparky's webpage, which Sparky the fire dog is our mascot at NFPA for the public education side of it. And the kids can go on that website, and there's plenty of games for them to do there, and they're learning while they're playing.
All right. Robert Duval, he is the New England Regional Manager and Senior Fire Investigator for the National Fire Protection Association. We'll take a break and come back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today, returning guest Robert Duval, New England Regional Manager and Senior Fire Investigator for the National Fire Protection Association. Not too long ago, as of the taping of this show, we fell back on the clock, set the clocks back, and there's always that reminder to change the batteries in your smoke detectors when you do that. Good rule of thumb.
Yep. Yes, very, very much so. You should check, not only changing the batteries, but you should also check the functioning of the smoke alarms. You should go through the house on a regular basis and hit the test button to make sure they work. But at this time of year, there's commercials, there's reminders in the media and in the newspapers, change the batteries. Count ahead of time, know how many you need, go down to the store, purchase those, and then go through and change all the batteries, and then you don't have to worry about it again for another period of time. It's very important to maintain the smoke alarms in the house, especially this time of year when your house is a little more closed up, and if you do have a fire starting, the smoke will be detected by these devices and give you the time that you need to get out of the house.
The positioning, the exact location of the smoke alarms is very important in the house too, right?
Yes. They should be smoke alarms on every level of the house, including the basement. Whether anyone is staying down there or not. So that way if a fire starts in the basement, the detector there will pick it up. So every level of the house, outside the sleeping areas, and then inside every sleeping room, every bedroom. If you have any ancillary rooms off of the side, maybe a laundry room or a small workshop or an office or something like that, or a porch, a three-season porch, it's probably your best advice to put one there as well.
Winter means heat, and we all need heat, but we all also need to be safely running the heat, and that probably starts down in the basement and then works its way up, right?
Right. You have, in New England, you have a preponderance of wood stoves as well as oil furnaces and propane and things like that. We'll start with wood stoves. Before the heating season even begins, or probably around September, you should be making arrangements to have the chimney looked at and cleaned. If you do it yourself, fine. If you have a service come in and do it, fine, but it's very important to maintain a clean chimney. Regardless of what type of wood you burn and how hot you burn it, it's always a good idea to have an expert take a look to see if there's anything wrong with the chimney, either it's dirty or it's cracked or anything like that. The wood stove itself, very, very efficient means of heating. I mean, it generates a tremendous amount of heat, and it comforts all of those in the house. But you also have to remember that you can't put any combustibles anywhere near the stove. You have to maintain an area around the stove. You have to be very careful loading the stove that nothing falls out. No embers or small pieces of burnt wood fall out. So there should be someone that knows how to do this, loading and checking on the stove and maintaining the stove, over the course of the day. As we were talking before, there was a very tragic incident that happened over the weekend in Maine. A family that heated their home with a wood stove, and They placed some pizza boxes after having some pizza after a family outing too close to the stove, and they went to bed.
Oh boy!
The pizza boxes ignited from the heat from the wood stove and set a fire in the house, and 4 of the family members died, 3 children and the father. There were no working smoke detectors in the house. They were there, none of them had any batteries in them. So the state fire marshal in Maine went on to the media in the state and pleaded with everyone to check the wood stove, and then please check your smoke alarms. Check the batteries, make sure if you had taken a battery out for one, it was either chirping or had gone off when you burnt something in the stove, keep the battery back in, put the battery back in, and make sure they're all working in your house.
And a lot of times when a smoke detector chirps, when there's not, it chirps in a different way, that means the battery is dying. It's sort of letting you know that it's time to replace the battery.
Correct.
It's a safety feature built into it.
Exactly. It warns you ahead of time, and just because we say, well, geez, I changed the batteries 6 months ago, there may be either something wrong with the battery you put in there, or there may be something wrong with that unit. So you should put a new battery in, and then listen closely for the next few hours, and if it chirps again, it might be time to buy a new unit. That particular smoke detector may be has lived its useful life and it might need for a new one.
So how about the others, the oil and natural gas, propane, heating sources like that?
Those furnaces should be serviced by a technician on a regular basis. Annually, it costs a small amount of money and lots of peace of mind to have a technician go in and clean it and check it and make sure that it's working properly, make sure that you have clearance around it. While it doesn't get as warm as the wood stove, it still gets warm, especially when it's running hard during the cold winter. You should maintain a clearance around it and make sure that it's running properly. They change nozzles, they change filters, they look at different other functioning components on the furnace, and just to make sure that it's working properly. So just because it's hidden in the basement and you forget about it and it comes on every time you turn the thermostat, you should have it looked at on a regular basis as well by qualified people. Any
other safety features in a typical house that people should be aware of as we come into the real cold weather now?
The heating, the smoke alarms, and the electrical things all go hand in hand. There's always, regardless of the time of season, there's always cooking fires and careless disposal of smoking materials. Those are 2 of the major causes of both fires in the home and fire deaths. Just be really careful when you're cooking. Don't leave anything unattended, especially if you're cooking oil and you're going to make French fries or something that's going to be deep fried in a skillet. Please don't leave it unattended. Just stay with it and make sure you shut everything off when you're done with it. Don't go in the other room and get tied up on a phone call or watching television or something like that. So cooking, be safe, make sure everything is attended while you're doing it. And smoking, just don't leave cigarettes unattended. Don't fall asleep while you're smoking. Try quitting smoking. That's probably your best bet.
It'll save you on some fires,
exactly,
that's for sure.
Exactly.
You know what one of the greatest things about firefighters is? They're human beings with feelings. And I see a lot of pictures lately in the social media of, aside from the obvious rescuing people when they need it, but you see pictures of them rescuing pets too, because they know that people love their pets as members of the family, just like anybody else in that family. And there are very heartwarming pictures of someone, a firefighter, rescuing a pet, dog, cat, or something like that.
Yeah. The time comes when that decision has to be made. The incident commander will say, if it's safe to go in and search for a pet, whether it be a cat, dog, or something else, or remove the cage in which they're in, if there's something that spends time in a box or an aquarium or something, but only when it's safe to do so. The firefighters will risk only so much. They'll risk everything to save a human being.
Right.
But when it comes to pets, they go to a certain point. But if the building is coming down around them, the cat or the dog is probably not there or not on this earth anymore anyway. But it does make the family feel that much better if they have lost a great deal in the fire, and if you can find the cat or the dog and bring them out, it gives them a starting point to kind of begin rebuilding and everything
their lives
else.
again.
And it means a lot to the family, not only the kids, but also to the family to have that with them. And the fire department will do what they can, to make that rescue, or to go back in as soon as they can afterwards. And if they're hiding somewhere where it wasn't damaged by the fire, or often where there's no smoke or little smoke, they can find them hiding someplace and bring them out and dust them off a little bit, maybe give them a little oxygen, bring them around.
I've seen those pictures too.
And
great.
It makes the family feel that much better after the tragedy that they've suffered.
There's always the stereotypical picture of the firefighter rescuing, getting the cat out of the tree, putting the ladder up on the tree.
Yeah, it happens. There's some departments that will not do it under under any circumstances, but you know, if it's right there and it's something that can be done simply enough, it's often more public relations than anything
Exactly. I was
else.
just going to say it's a good PR
And
move, too.
it's great because that little kid has got his cat back, or mom or dad can say, "See what happens when you let the cat out the back door," you know. And like you mentioned, the firefighters are all, you know, soft at heart. You know,
and they're members of
like
the community, too.
Exactly. They have to drive through that community later on. If it's the volunteers, they live in that community. If it's the career folks, they work in that community all the time. So they see the neighbors all the time.
But tell
it's
them
just something nice to do.
Tell little Johnny I'm not going up 7 more times when Fluffy runs up there.
Exactly. Get a leash for Fluffy. Yeah.
One more time on the website.
Okay, it's www.nfpa.org.
All right, Robert Duval, New England Regional Manager and Senior Fire Investigator for the National Fire Protection Association. Thanks again for being on the show.
All right, thank you for having me again.
You'll be able to watch this show and others if you go to our YouTube site, and there'll be a link for that on the screen as well. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.